I recently got a question, should I buy 28mm to 200mm super zoom? It's looking great for weddings, but also for travel photography and for street photography. Should I get that Tamron or another Tamron? Let's talk about this now. Hi there, Tudor Matescu here. Please subscribe to my channel if you aren't subscribed yet. I've recently talked to my friend that wants to order a Tamron 28 to 200mm. The Tamron, it's a really great zoom and I'm really liking it, and I was always tempted about it because I had a super zoom on the Micro Four Thirds system, the 12 to 100 f4 Pro Zoom from Olympus. So 24 to 200, and I know how great it's a super zoom for traveling, but my friend tries to justify the purchase by thinking that he will use the Tamron for wedding photography. He already shoots lots of primes, but for wedding photography he doesn't have a macro lens for detailed shots, and also he doesn't have a 200mm equivalent lens. He has Sigma 85mm f1.4, Samyang 50mm f1.4, Sony 35mm f1.8 and Samyang 24mm f1.8 and other lenses. So he is thinking that probably from time to time he will use that zoom with another prime. My advice is that it depends, because that zoom doesn't have a great aperture for event and wedding photography. If you already shoot primes with f1.4, f1.8 lenses, you do not want to use a super zoom that will go to f5.6 at 85 or f4 depending on the range. Anyway, f4, f5.6, of course you'll not have the depth of field that a normal zoom will offer you at f2.8, and of course you not have the depth of field of a prime lens that it's at f1.4 or at f1.8. So is that Tamron lens good for wedding photography, for portraiture photography and so on? My advice is that yes, it's good, but if you already have the prime lenses, probably you'll go back to the prime lenses because you'll obtain better image quality, better ISO, better shutter speeds and so on. So that zoom will be usable just on a sunny day. So my advice is that that zoom will be usable in 30%, 20% of time when you have good light. Other than that, you'll want to go with a better lens, a prime lens, or a better zoom with an f2.8 zoom. I have here Tamron 28 to 75mm f2.8 on all the range, and this is a great zoom. Very cheap, I would say, for a full frame f2.8 zoom that it's helping you take all the shots that you need from the wide end to the tele end. But more than that, if you are into wedding photography and even photography, I would advise look at Tamron 35mm to 150mm f2.8. If you don't want to use primes and if you want just one zoom to rule them all, even if that zoom is big, that zoom is ideal and especially made for wedding photography, even photography for run and gun photographers. So why complicate your life? It's very important to make a purchase that is specialized for your need. The Tamron 28mm to 200mm, it can be useful for portraiture photography, wedding photography, even photography, how other reviewers showed. I agree with this, but it will not be as useful as a prime lens or as a dedicated f2.8 zoom lens. So this zoom, it's a decisive zoom in the travel category. So if you want an all-around full frame Sony, I don't know if it's available on other mounts, Tamron zoom, then yes, I feel the zoom it's excellent, even if the zoom doesn't have optical stabilization. So the zoom doesn't have optical stabilization at 200mm full frame, it will work so and so, again with good light. But my advice, if you want to invest in a Tamron zoom for wedding photography and do some other stuff with it, I would go either with the 28 to 75mm f2.8. You can get great portraits just getting it a little closer. Of course, it's not an 85mm, and of course it's not a 24mm at the wide end, and here you will have a problem. But also you can buy another Tamron zoom for the wide end or for the tele end. My advice is that if you want one lens to rule them all, that lens it's made by Tamron and it's the 35mm f2.8 to 150mm f2.8. With that lens, you'll replace all the prime lenses in this field of view if you aren't picky. And at the 35mm, the Tamron zoom has an f2 aperture, and from what I've looked online, it's going just from 85mm at f2.8. But at 85mm f2.8, it's really okay. It's really okay. And you really have a very specialized, amazing lens. It has just one downside if you want to use that lens for event photography when you are in a tight space, so you'll miss the wide angle. But what I like here about the 28mm to 150mm zoom is that you really know what you will miss. You'll miss a wide angle lens, a prime lens or a zoom lens. So the next lens to pair the 35mm to 150mm f2.8 Tamron lens, if you need a wide lens, it's a wide lens. And that lens could be Sony 20mm f1.8 or other wide lenses depending on what you want. Of course, you can go even wider with a 16 to 28mm f2.8 zoom and you are all covered up. You really not need another lens. You really not need another lens. Just if you want the f1.4 special lenses, and this is another story, but I think it really depends on the type of photographer. Some photographers are liking zooms and other photographers are liking prime lenses. If you are a high-end photographer or if you want to have high prices, I would advise go for prime lenses. Go for the f1.4 prime lenses. It's easy peasy. The clients are looking at the depth of field and at that sharpness. It's easy peasy. f1.4 for high-end ticket clients in photography world. But if you are a run and gun and if you don't have high prices and if you don't like to complicate things and to have many primes, of course the f2.8 zooms can be really something. In the end, it's up to you. If you know photography, you'll be able to get very good shots also with the f2.8 zooms. So you'll be able to do this. The 35mm to 150mm can replace the f1.4 prime lenses if you have enough space to zoom in on the subject, because the compression will help you have that shallow depth of field. So this is very important. But don't try to skip on lenses. Don't try to take a travel lens and say it okay, it's cheaper, it is more budget friendly, I can also use it for events because I have such a long reach. Take a prime lens, shoot it at f5.6, f4 and tell me if you are okay with that lens for the depth of field and for shutter speeds and how that lens will act in low light situations. If you don't like how that lens will act in low light situations, don't lie yourself. The lenses in general are really specialized. The Tamron 28mm to 200mm, even if the YouTubers, the reviewers showed how they are making portraits with flash, with that zoom lens, and again, it may work, but you'll not fool a lens that has double the price with a travel lens. So you'll not fool a specialized f2.8 lens that has double the price with a travel lens. Things aren't working like this, so don't get fooled. So really think what kind of photographer you are, what kind of clients do you want, and choose your zoom. If you want a zoom to have it all and not break the bank, of course the 28mm to 75mm f2.8, it is really sufficient and you'll be able to do an entire event with just this if you are just starting out. Other than that, it's just a taste of I want to have that shallow depth of field, I want to have that angle and other tidbits that photographers are wanting in their photography. But for beginner photographers and for an all-around do-it-all run and gun, just get close or get back, f2.8, great glass, great AF, especially the latest version, not this one. This Tamron is making some problems in AF, but the second version, I understand it is better. But for me, this is sufficient. For me and my wife, this is sufficient. Crazy lens, crazy good lens. So choose wise and get the specialized lens that you need for your type of photography. Don't try to mix things because it will not work like this. Don't imagine that at 200mm with f5.6 you'll you'll get amazing subject to background separation. Yes, you'll get it. You'll get it depending on how you will work with the clients. But at the reception, you'll not be able to use 200mm with f5.6. It's not working like this. You need at least f2.8. I had the chance to use the Tamron zoom, 28 to 200mm, and I want to update this video before publishing it to tell you that yes, it's exactly how I've analyzed this zoom without having it in my hand. So my friend bought the Tamron 28 to 200mm. The zoom is small, it's smaller and lighter than the 28 to 75mm f2.8. So I was really amazed how small that zoom is. But on the long term it's not so small and it's not so light. It has also the weight and size as the 12 to 100 f4 Olympus zoom, a zoom that I really loved, that had optical stabilization in it. The Tamron doesn't have optical stabilization in it, so it's usable just in good light. After the light it's going out in summer days, you can use that zoom just at 28mm. Of course, you can use a tripod and use lights and do all kinds of stuff, but it's an all-around travel zoom that also is not so sharp at 200mm, and also it will have all the problems that I've described in this video. I'm not saying to not buy that zoom. I'm just saying that that zoom is a specialized zoom for traveling. Also, you can use it in some videography scenarios. But anyway, choose the right zoom for you, how I've said. So this is why the specialized zooms for wedding photography, for event photography, have at least f2.8. So choose wise, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.